The longer we live, the more we experience new beginnings and inevitable goodbyes. In this episode of Aging Unscripted, we'll explore grief in all of its forms, not just after loss, but during life's many transitions. With the holidays approaching, we'll talk about how to navigate grief during this season, how to honor old traditions, and create space for new ones. Join us for an honest discussion about how we can carry grief and gratitude as we age. Welcome to Aging Unscripted. Here we explore a wide range of topics aimed at celebrating, supporting, exploring, and honoring the aging journey. I'm Jill Vitale-Aussem, and I'm privileged to serve as the president and CEO at Christian Living Communities, a nonprofit senior living and service organization based in Denver, Colorado. And with me today, co-host Pam Sullivan, Vice President of Communications and Philanthropy. And today we have Robert Smith, who is our Executive Director of Chaplain Services. Thanks for being here, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
And we are thrilled to have Jenn Flaum with us. Jenn is the Executive Director of the HeartLight Center, a Colorado-based nonprofit providing meaningful and accessible grief support and education to individuals, as well as professional and voluntary caregivers supporting someone through their grief. And Jenn, thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
When we were getting ready to talk, to start the show, you talked about the founding of your organization. Could you tell that story really quickly so people know who you all are?
Absolutely. So HeartLight Center is a nonprofit that's founded here in Denver, Colorado. The way that it was kind of came to fruition was John Horan and Valerie Horan, former owners of Horan and McConaty Funeral Service. It was really a vision of Valerie's. Valerie worked in funeral service her entire career, and she would answer phones. And when people would call, she would listen. And she said over and over again, I just wish there was a place. And her vision was that there would be a candle in the window where people knew that they could come and someone would listen and hear their stories. And she even had rocking chairs in the corner of the funeral homes, kind of as that symbol of how to process grief. So Valerie then worked with one of the funeral directors at the time at Horan and McConaty, Jennifer McBride, who lost her dad. And Jennifer also found that there really wasn't anywhere to go. And so they founded HeartLight Center as a place really with the intention of allowing people a space to go and be with others and feel heard and validated and just in community and a warm, welcoming space.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It can be so isolating when you're grieving, right? And so that's what a beautiful mission. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And for the purposes of our conversation today, in your mind, what are we talking about when we say grief and grieving?
Yeah, grief really is this natural response that we have with any loss, but also comes up with transition. So anytime we have a transition, we have this human response. And oftentimes when we think of grief, we think of like deep sadness. But it's really multifaceted. And grief, I know we've all seen it manifest in different ways, even to the point where somebody will be experiencing something maybe physically or behaviorally, and it'll be like, what's wrong with this person? Or, something's changed. And sometimes we can do all of the diagnostic tests that there are, from a physical symptom standpoint, and then later realize, oh, this person's grieving. And so it's not just sadness, but it really is our natural human reaction to a transition or loss.
And Robert, in your role, you see this all the time. It's not just a mark in time. Right. The grieving process. What do you see? I mean, it's a continual thing.
It's a continual thing. It's a process. It never really leaves us. In fact, I just this past weekend, before we recorded this, I was back with my wife's family to do some memorial services, some memorial things for her parents that her father-in-law died almost 2 years ago at this point. And leading up to that, I thought myself, these weird reactions. What is going on? Like, what is wrong with me? Oh, this is grief, right? This has been 2 years, but we're coming up on the close of a chapter, and that's when it hit. Our residents will often ask how their friends and neighbors are doing in their grief, and I always say they're grieving appropriately, because for everybody that looks different, right? Everybody's on their own journey. It's sadness. Sometimes it's happiness. Sometimes it's confusion. Sometimes it's all free at the same time. And that is really confusing.
And then you cycle back through it all
And then
again.
you cycle back through it all over again.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a companion. As I was thinking through today, it struck me how grief can, in some ways, it brings wisdom. It brings this depth to our emotions, a new understanding to our emotions. That goodbye and hello to new opportunities, they're all intertwined in some ways.
And how does grief and joy coexist for people?
I hear that all the time. Oftentimes people will say, I feel crazy. And I think it's so natural for us to want to put things in their place. We, by nature, feel more safe when there's order. And grief is an order disruptor. And we also so often think of like you're either happy or sad. You're not, it's rare that we say I'm happy and sad. And so we're almost conditioned, and we learn over time that you're happy or sad, you're mad or you're not, you're calm or you're excited. And when we're grieving all of those things, there's this duality. So two opposing things coexist at the same time. And if we don't know that in our minds and in our hearts, it can make us feel like we've lost control and order, because we're living in this liminal space, this in between what was and what is, or what was and what will be. And so it can make us feel uncomfortable. But when we lean in to, I think, knowing and understanding something, learning about it, can help us to kind of understand how is it possible for sadness and joy to coexist.
Right.
And I always think about, I'm sure this can resonate with a lot of people, a moment when we're crying or something, deep emotional pain is happening, and then something funny happens. And like all of a sudden, everybody's laughing, maybe through tears. And that's a great moment or an example of sadness and joy coexisting, even though one might feel stronger than the other. And then really over time, as grief, we say, never really leaves you, like you say, but we transition to where we are able to cope with, or maybe the joy is more apparent and visits us more often than the sadness. But it doesn't mean either one don't exist.
Right. Yeah. I liked what you said about the liminal space. And I feel like sometimes, like if you try to compress that, and then I just want to move through this really uncomfortable time, because I do feel like I'm, losing my mind, and I don't like this pain. And somebody, I remember saying that when you try to push down grief, it's like pushing a beach ball into the water. And the further you push it down and the longer you try to hold it down, the more violently it will erupt to the surface. And I was like, that's a really good description, right? Of not finding that space to process things. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but maybe I am.
I know, and that's the point, though, right? Yeah. This is a topic that everyone experiences. Everyone's had either a loss or a transition. And that's the piece that I think is really key, is it's not just about losing a loved one.
There's all
It's a
kinds.
transition. I mean, it could be, when you and I were talking, you got this great big dream job, but you're still grieving what was known and you already had mastered, right? Or it can be, in our space, somebody who's moving from one home to another, into a senior living community, to a new home. That can be a grieving process too.
Yeah. And so both of you, and from your different perspectives, do you see the way people experience grieving change? And I know everybody's different, but are there things that you see throughout our lifespan that changes the way we experience it? Or is that too broad to put on?
I think it's some of both. I think, I'm thinking about our residents within Christian living communities as they make that transition into the communities. And for almost all of them, it's a good thing, right? They're looking forward to it. This is something that they have planned for, and they're joyful. And at the same time, there comes this moment, whether it's the day of the move, a week after, a year after, where they go, what did I do? And there's this moment of angst. And I realized after all that's grief, right? That they're grieving that stability they had, that security, that known, that home that they maybe owned for 40 years, even though the new is wonderful, there's grief. And I think for many people, we talked about the loss of a loved one, a death loss. We, as a society, I think we say it's okay to grieve that for a time. That's the societal pressure, but it's expected that you're grieving that kind of loss. But we don't talk about the other kinds of loss. So I think for a lot of people, it's a journey just to say, I am grieving, and that's okay.
Yeah. Or losing the ability to drive anymore. That's a big trigger, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes for people.
Or the physical ability. I was speaking with a resident yesterday, actually, and she said she's realizing with her own kid, we're talking about patience, and with her kids, right, that it takes her longer to do things, that she is just slower in life than she used to be, and that frustrates her kids, and there's grief attached to that. But I think on the other side is there's so much wisdom in life, especially for our older adults, that they have been through hard things, right? They know what it's like to come through on the other side. They know who their support systems are around them. They know who to tap into. So in some ways, it's new grief, it's unexpected grief, but they've also have that long perspective of, I have done this before. I know I can do it again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Jenn, you had mentioned too, and you're touching on it, Robert, anticipatory grief. So mom and dad are aging, or there's a diagnosis that comes, dementia, for example. Talk to me about what is anticipatory grief and how do you deal or prepare for that?
Yeah, anticipatory grief really is you're grieving something, whether it be a death loss or a transition, before it happens. And so we're starting to think about what is this going to be like? What's it going to feel like? With a diagnosis, what are the losses or the transitions that I'm anticipating I'm going to face? And so we can start to even grieve. We can start that grieving process at that time of the diagnosis or the transition, and then almost restarts or presents itself in a different way when it happens. So, for a dementia diagnosis, for example, it's one thing to get the diagnosis and then start to anticipate the grief that's going to surround that and the loss of freedom that comes maybe even automatically or right in that time. But then when, as that disease progresses, we have different points in time where we grieve differently for each point in time where another loss happens. And then eventually, at the time of death, they're just different types of losses along the way. And so anticipatory grief often is something that in my opinion, we don't talk about any of this enough. But I realize I'm a biased source. But really recognizing that that I'm feeling this already, but mom's still okay. And it's okay. Of course you're feeling that. I always say, how could you not be? Mm-hmm. And then what we do with that and who we can learn to be our safe people to trust. What type of plans can we make? How do we prepare ourselves, both logistically and emotionally, so that we can navigate through things with as much grace as possible?
So you help people who are in that part of the journey as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, so at HeartLight Center, we mostly have offered programming as it relates to death loss, but recognizing the need in our community right now, especially around caregiving. We have started to really lean into and listen. So we have a couple of caregiving groups that we invite people to attend to be able to talk about those things.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between good grief and destructive grief or bad grief? And how do you recognize what you're in?
Yes. I think it's often that we will say there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And when we aren't putting ourselves at harm or somebody else at harm, then oftentimes that's true. What we're feeling, what we're experiencing, all of that is individual, although there are commonalities, and so it doesn't have to be as frightening. There's usually somebody that's felt the way that you do. Mm-hmm. When things start to become destructive or more complicated.
Or bad grief, yeah. Going back to that, you have to have a label for everything. Yeah.
But really looking at our coping mechanisms and how much is this impacting my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. So for a period of time, especially right after a loss that was really meaningful to us, it's going to be difficult to sleep and kind of meet our own daily needs. We might not want to get out of bed. We might not be able to sleep. Our diet might change pretty significantly. Those are really common things. But if those start to last much longer than 3 months is kind of one of those points in time where really this is impacting our day-to-day living, then that's when kind of that turning point to say, okay, I need to seek additional help outside of the support system that I have. At any point in time, I always like to tell people if people are experiencing any physical symptoms or if they, again, are having coping mechanisms that are putting themselves or somebody else at risk, then that's when we'd want to seek professional help immediately, regardless of timeframes.
Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly what I would have said. It's really that disruption to life to me is kind of that marker. And again, it's individual to each person.
But it doesn't mean after 3 months you're not grieving anymore, right? We're talking about you start to be able to, absolutely.
Yes, somebody 3-6 months after loss says, I'm still really sad, but I want, that is, to me, that's not great, but you've said that's normal, that's healthy. But if somebody 3-6 months after the fact says, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't eat. I can't get out of bed. I can't go to work.
Right.
Now this is disrupting that daily life.
Right.
Or if they can identify those things that are falling by the wayside, and usually they will say, there's a hurdle in front of me. I can't do this.
Right.
It's disrupting my life.
Right. But my dad always calls, after my mom passed away, all of the immediate, really acute grief. And then over time, it was, I only had 3 grief bursts today. Yeah. Right. And then you start to go, okay, it's still with you, but, and it always will be. And you still have grief bursts. But I see what you're saying. Thank you for that. Yeah. That it's that piece of it.
Somebody gave me this picture one time and I like it. And I don't know if you've heard this one. When grief is new, it's like a big ball and there's a box around and there's a pain button in there. And when grief is new, that ball fills the whole box and it's just pushed up against the button. And over time, the ball doesn't get any smaller, but your box expands around it. You grow and you learn to work with it. And then the ball can bounce around and it's still mostly filling the box. It keeps hitting it. But over time, right, the box is pretty big and that ball can, it's not constant.
I like that.
And then every now and then it just randomly tings up and hits that button.
Well, one of those buttons for a lot of people are the holidays. Yes. We're coming into that time. Why are the holidays such a button pusher for your grief?
Yeah. I think to me, when it comes to the holidays, it's a meaningful time for people. If you are celebrating a holiday, it's meaningful. It's one of those touch points in life. And there's so much tradition around it. It's so much sensory that goes into it, right? Sights, smells, sounds, things you expect. And when that picture doesn't line up, when you look at that picture and you go, wait, something is missing. And that something might be a person.
Or your house that you were in, right? Yeah.
Your tradition. Your family moved across the country. Yeah, I can't do those traditions anymore.
Right. Suddenly you're confronted with that. It's a straight shot to that button, right? Because you're reminded of what isn't there.
I would add to that, I think there's also pressure around the holidays. The messaging that we can get all of the time, even if we're driving, the parking lots are full and the songs on the radio are Holly Jolly Christmas and the bell ringer and we're excited and constantly asked, what are you doing for the holidays? Even just in passing. And, for the term Merry Christmas, there's an implication there that we are to be happy and holly jolly. I remember I was working in hospice care at one point in my career, and it was Christmas Eve, the day of, and I went and met with a woman who was just newly admitted to hospice. And it was one of the more really profound meetings with somebody because of the dichotomy of what was happening. So in her home, she had just received this terminal illness and had changed her plan of care medically. And then I left, and I was really in that space kind of with her and processing what that would be like. And I got a phone call, and my mom said, okay, so what are you bringing to dinner tonight? Like, can you go pick up the bread? And I thought, I don't really care about the bread, actually. And so holidays oftentimes are filled with kind of that commercialism and the expectation and pressure to feel happy and be joyful. And when we're grieving, that's not maybe lining up with how we feel.
Yeah.
And so just recognizing that not everybody around us is looking forward to all of the things.
How do you help people? So what self-care suggestions do you have for, because I'm sure there'll be people listening to this, right, who are like, "Ooh, you're speaking right to me, Jeff."
I resonate.
What do you both say to people?
I think there's a couple of we actually just issued, I brought a couple and I sent you the link, some resources around how to support each other as family members, how to support ourselves, and then how to really honor those traditions. So I think there are a couple things, like practically speaking, around the holidays. If you're in a place of transition or grieving, the number one thing I always tell people is feel free to make plans and also let people know that you might cancel them. Mm-hmm. So say yes if that feels like a place you might want to go, and then give yourself permission to then in that moment say no.
Or a lesson just for life. Right. But that really spoke to you.
Yeah. So that's one that we really encourage. The other one is just going back to basics, simplifying where we can, saying, I will come, but at this point, I can't bring something this time, giving ourselves that permission, and then finding what fuels us, what brings us peace and calm. Is it a warm blanket, but with intention? Is it music? Is it a candle? It can be very simple. Is it when we're driving, not having anything on the radio? Just finding place to kind of deregulate our bodies, and then logistically not feel that pressure to participate as much as maybe we have in the past.
Robert, do you have anything to add?
I think, yes, everything there. And adding on to that, I think that pressure, right, to feel a certain way or to be a certain way. And I think, to me, boundaries are important. I think that permission to say no, and just to know it's okay, right? To acknowledge that going into, especially that first holiday season, but then subsequent as well, it will be hard, right? This is going to hurt. It's going to be hard. And that's okay. So to acknowledge that, and I think with that pressure piece, I think people mean very well, and they are loving and supportive, and that's the power of community. And so they will invite you in and say, come join us, come be part of our happy, right? And that will feel very pressured. Oh, I have to go. I can't say no. And I think most people will be okay if you say no to them, right? Because they just want to know that you're okay, right? So it's that knowing that pressure is not always pressure, right? That it is well-meaning, and it is okay to say, I can't do that today. I think is important.
I had this tradition where we had like 30 people on Christmas Eve, and then my family dynamic changed drastically. I'm going to have 3 this year. And so for me, I have that void. And so I'm going to be volunteering because I need something that replaces what I used to have. And so I don't know if that's something too, but to think about what is it that you're missing? And to me, it's the 3-ring circus, because I kind of thrived on getting that big meal together. It's the 3-ring circus I missed. Yeah. And so what does it look like to have a new tradition? And I'm trying to establish a new one in volunteering, a new tradition.
And that's the meaning and intention Jenn talked about, right? What was so important about this, right? It was the people, it was the energy.
Yeah.
I can recreate that. No, I can't recreate that. I can find a new way to experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, is that intention and what's behind it.
The other piece is, those are logistical things too, but is the power of ceremony and ritual. And sometimes our traditions, we have those maybe rituals are most common, or ceremonies that we have individually, but creating a new one. So oftentimes people will share stories of, if somebody's normally at the table and this is the first holiday without them, what are we doing? Is there something that we could do that would feel good to honor them? Is there a candle at their spot? Do we all go around the table and say one thing that grandpa or grandma would have loved about the place? If it's, our ceremony, or it can be really ritualistic to prepare meals and food. And what if your kitchen's smaller this year? And so taking the meaning behind the food and the preparation and writing down those recipes and maybe recording. We've made a video one time of one of my grandparents making the spaghetti. And so taking what was so meaningful about those things and creating meaning and purpose and ceremony and ritual around them, just recognizing the reality of what is happening.
Yeah. Can you give us, I feel like one of the things is we don't know what to say to people, and we don't know how to support people who are going through whatever it is, a divorce, they lost a loved one, they're going through a health crisis. And so sometimes we don't say anything.
Yeah.
So how can we lift other people up, support? Maybe you can't lift people up, right? Maybe that's too much pressure to put on yourself. You can't fix it. But how can we support people, especially during the holiday? How do I show up, especially like during a holiday time where you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't ask this person because this is a happy day and they're sad. So, it's so hard. What do you tell people?
There are lists of what to say and what not to say, and that's very concrete. And happy to share them.
Okay,
but I think
it'll be in our podcast.
Good, please. How to share this concrete list. But I think it boils down to two things. The first is intention, and the second is curiosity. And if our intent is pure, more often than not, what we say will be received in that same way.
That's good.
So some lists, if you look at them, don't say, I'm sorry for your loss. And I would say, I'd recommend not in passing being like, I'm sorry for your loss. But if you look at somebody and say, I'm really sorry that this happened. Like my intent is seen through that. So the words are the same, but the intention is different. And then I also think if we find ourselves in a place where we don't know what to say, and we often, we get that feeling of discomfort, we don't have to say anything. We get to ask a question. What's this been like for you?
Wow. And create space for somebody to actually
share if they want. Yeah.
Okay. So I think intention and curiosity are really, really powerful. The other way, just in 2 words to sum that up, is don't feel like you need to be interesting, be interested.
Oh, okay. That's good.
I like that.
That is good.
So we've talked about all kinds of different pieces of grief. We've talked about the grieving process is ongoing. Holidays can be a trigger. How do you move forward with both of finding the joy back in the season and allowing space for grieving?
Do you want to jump in on that? Happy to.
It's such a rich question. Right.
I think finding joy again in the holidays is something people may want.
Yeah.
But they don't want to abandon their grief.
Yeah.
I think it depends, right? Whether this is new or, we're 5 years down the road, wherever the case may be, the joy will come. I don't think you can force it, right? We keep using the word intention. I don't think you can force it. I think that's the first thing. But this idea that grief and joy can kind of be this two sides of the same coin, right? That we grieve what we were grateful to have had, but we're also grateful for having the thing that we could love. So I think having that gratitude of this is what I was able to share, this is the meaning that I have, even to say, I don't like this sore spot in me, I don't like this pain, but I'm grateful for the love, I'm grateful for the memories, right? Those things will come. New traditions, and maybe your tradition is continuing an old tradition, maybe it's a new tradition, and that can feel dishonoring. But allowing the moment to be what it is and to experience it for what it is. I love you talked about that. So often people will be sitting there crying and grieving, and something will happen and the laughter comes. And there's something so sweet about those tears that come, or the laughter that comes after tears, where, if we're sitting around telling jokes, that's laughter based on circumstances. But when that joy and that laughter comes out of grief, there's a grace that I think comes with that makes that joy something deeper. And so I don't think you can force that. I think it's allowing that meaning to come forward with intention to remember and to say, how do we honor and move forward and allow that joy to come at its own pace?
Wow. That just, do you have anything?
More. I mean, that was a great answer, but
A chaplain's not going to be afraid of a deep question, but
You have to give me a minute to think about it.
yeah,
But
it's okay. But I think going back to the depth is the power of knowing that if we have the capacity to feel deep emotional pain, we simultaneously have the capacity to feel deep emotional joy or other emotions. So it's kind of like when you meet somebody who is a feeler, the person who is just as the highs are high and the lows are lows. But a lot of us kind of are in the in-between. But just being open to the possibility of a moment, just a moment of feeling peace or joy. And that can start with intentional gratitude.
yeah, wonderful. Well, you guys have talked about a lot of resources. Yeah, we will have all the resources.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, so you will. Do you want to leave our listeners, viewers, with a last thought on all of this? For somebody out there who might be listening and they're like, it's a rough time right now.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's this idea that naming grief doesn't diminish joy. It gives depth to it. It gives new texture to it in a way that, like Jenn said, they're not mutually exclusive. That grief is okay.
Yeah.
It's hard. The joy will come and the grief will remain, and that's okay. But there are people alongside. I was also thinking, as we were talking about joy and grief coexisting, it's okay to borrow others' joy. I was
We need people, right? It's during this.
to say, I may not feel happy, but I can appreciate the joy I see in others, and I can take that on. I'm reminded so many times where, from the Christian scriptures, where people are commanded to not only be joyful, but to share that joy with those that don't have it. That acknowledgement that not everybody has it, and that's okay. Sometimes we lean on others, and other times people lean on us, and that's okay too.
That's really good too. Thank you. Jenn, what about you?
I think so often there's kind of like these two spheres when we're grieving. It's like what's happening here concretely, but then what's happening deep in our hearts, maybe souls or spirits too. And so vacillating between the two can sometimes feel comfortable. So finding the things to do that make us feel good, whether that be an activity or task. I love how you said, volunteering, giving back, I think is a really, when we can, or being a part of something bigger than ourselves, which leads to when we really lean into grief, which means we're probably trying not to push the beach ball down into the pool. But when we are open to feeling whatever it is, that's when the power of whatever has brought us grounding and comfort in the past, we can really draw into that. For many of us, it's a deeper faith and spirituality. Grief oftentimes leads us to ask questions about our faith or re-examine it, but it can also lead us to be even more deeply faithful. And so really, what is it in our lives, regardless of what that faith is or what it is in, to lean into that, the notion that there's something bigger than me. And maybe it's just me giving back. Maybe it's me supporting somebody else, or maybe it's a higher power or a religion.
Finding some meaning.
But finding that meaning is really, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of community. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, they said, we're talking about Christian living communities, and how does our communities help people navigate loss around the holidays? And I said, for many of our residents, it could be the loss of a person, but so loss of space, loss of
Tradition.
the ability to do the traditions. but there's also energy and people to help create new, right? Everybody is experiencing some form of that loss around you, to lean into community, whether that's neighbors, faith communities, family, friends, that there is community and there's people, and we need each other in that.
That sounds really, because you might just want to isolate yourself, but reach out, right? Because there are wonderful people around who want to care about you.
Yeah. Oh, well, this has been good.
It's been
Good timely topic.
Oh my gosh. Thank you both so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of our listeners and our viewers who are here with us today for Aging Unscripted. A reminder that aging is indeed unscripted. Please subscribe to on your favorite streaming channel and share this podcast, especially this one. If you know somebody out there who you think might benefit from listening to this, please share it with them. That's why we do this work. Each of us has a journey that is as individual as we are. Not everyone receives the gift of aging. It truly is a sacred phase of life that should be honored and celebrated. Thank you for being with us today.